I'm not sure if any attendees coming in right now can already hear us, but if so, we're going to start right at 1 o'clock, and appreciate you being here. It says we're not broadcasting. Maybe we'll have like 5 minutes of silence before the presentation starts. We'll see what happens. Okay. So it looks like people are already admitted, and they can probably see and hear us here. So I'm just going to put my phone on mute. And Stephen, we can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
All right, it is 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock Central. Let's give it a go. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for another JTC Joint Technology Committee hosted by WMIA and WMMA. Today, myself, Steve McNeely from Sheffield, North America, along with David Biggs from Woodworking Network and Scott Massey from Massey Sales, will be hosting and walking you through the webinar. Just a side note before we get going, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, there is a Q&A box in the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask any questions, and then we will answer those in a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So first, we'll talk about the Joint Technology Committee. Those of you who are familiar with us and what we do, this will be redundant, but for those of you who are new, the Joint Technology Committee is a group of members from the MIA and WMMA. It's a committee that our goal is to take topics of interest related to technology that could be advantageous to our association members. We take questions and topics, we research them, and then we present them to you as they may apply to your business and to our industry. Today's topic is going to be QR codes. This is a topic that we touched on briefly in a previous JTC. The feedback we received from that webinar was positive and asking for some more information on QR codes specifically. So today's agenda, we'll do a quick recap of what a QR code is, where they originated, how easy they are to use, to create. We'll give you some use case scenarios. We'll talk a little bit about security, and then provide some additional resources for QR codes, and then we'll have a Q&A for any of your questions afterwards. So QR codes have been around for quite some time. They were a slow growth technology, which ramped up quite rapidly in 2018 when iOS and Android phone systems adopted the use natively within the camera app. So you could take a picture or scan a QR code with the phone camera and then immediately go to that link or that source of information. That technology growth increased exponentially in the past few years with the existence of the COVID-19 pandemic, when companies were trying to find a way to reduce the amount of physical information that was passed around: menus, business cards, technology and information, product pamphlets, and things like that. The QR codes allowed for a quick and easy way to digitally share that information using a very, easily and readily available technology, your smartphone. And creating QR codes is very easy. There are a lot of QR code generators available on the market, and a lot of programs, web browsers have tools built into them to help you create those QR codes to easily share the information. We'll go through an example here with Chrome. If you go to a website, in this example, we've got WMMA.org. You click the share icon in the web link. You go to QR code, and it'll generate the QR code that you can download, you can share. But this is a really easy way to share information graphically that somebody can easily take a picture of or scan and go to that source of information without typing it out or writing it down. And this is available, as I said before, in a lot of different programs, a lot of different softwares, not just necessarily in Chrome. So what's a QR code as it relates to or compares to a traditional linear barcode? Functionally, they have very similar functions at their core, but a linear barcode has a lot of limitations. It's a one-dimensional barcode. You're limited to the width of your medium, whatever you're printing on or whatever you're displaying. So the number of your characters is extremely limited. Generally speaking, they're limited to numeric characters, whereas a QR code can be alphanumeric, and a small QR code, such as the one on your screen, can hold several thousand characters compared to a linear barcode of a similar size, which may be able to hold a dozen to 20. They're much easier to scan. You can scan them from multiple angles. They have built-in characteristics that allow them to orient themselves correctly once they've been scanned. And then you can also customize them. You can make them colors. You can put graphics in them. You can build them into artwork without risk of a scanner not being able to detect them. And in some cases, you can even animate them and put moving graphics behind the QR code, like the one that we're showing here on the screen. So these are all examples of QR codes. All of these are scannable, various substrates, various applications, different artwork around them, much different uses, but all of these are scannable, usable in different scenarios for everyday life. Another really useful characteristic of a QR code, aside from being able to hold a lot of data, aside from being more reliable on the scan, and aside from being able to be used in different scenarios and different mediums, is the ability to link a QR code to a website. Or, for example, if you're on a network where you have to access files or resources that are held on a server, instead of having to bury all the information in a static QR code like you have on the left, you can actually just use that QR code as a link to that resource, whether it be a website, whether it be something on an intranet. So that information can always be up to date, accurate, and it's not a complete refresh. You don't have to release new information to get that new information out in front of the users. And we're going to demonstrate 5 use cases, some of them static, some of them dynamic, that you may be able to apply in your everyday life.
All right, thanks, Stephen. That's a great introduction to what QR codes are. And now we're going to move on to some use cases of how they actually can be used in industry. We're not going to provide an exhaustive list, but hopefully it'll trigger some ideas for how you can use it in your company. So the first thing we'll talk about is service manuals. A typical old school shop will have a big shelf full of paper manuals and the electrical diagrams and whatever they need for maintaining machines, and that'll be sitting in an office. And a newer school shop might have that same shelf, but it'll be full of CDs or DVDs, or even a big folder on a network somewhere containing a bunch of PDFs. The downside of this is those manuals and information are fixed, meaning they can't easily be updated. and they're stored in one central place, usually away from the machine that's actually needed to be worked on. So imagine being able to walk up to a machine, scan a QR code on the machine, and have your tablet load up the most recent copy of the maintenance manual for the machine that you're actually standing in front of. Make things a little bit easier for you. Maintenance checklists, many shops we walk into have a piece of paper taped onto the machine listing when the machine should be greased, cleaned, or otherwise maintained. In a lot of cases, those sheets have never been updated. They're ripped and torn, so you can't read them, or they have handwritten adjustments to the procedure written on them. Most of those sheets are simply a written description of the work needed. For example, grease once a week or check belts monthly, something like that. What if the manufacturer of the machine included a list actually on the machine saying daily, weekly, monthly, yearly maintenance, and each of those line items had a QR code? Those QR codes could link to a nice web page listing each of the steps, including pictures, video, or other information showing the correct maintenance procedures. Another option is every machine comes with a nameplate. Typically, we've got a serial number on there, voltage, and other critical information on the machine. When maintenance person needs parts or help, they typically write down that serial number or whatever else other information they need, and they take that piece of paper into the office to do what they need, send an RFQ or whatever. What about if they could scan a QR code on the nameplate that would bring up a list of all the detailed information, a much further expanded list, and they can carry that list of information into the office with them on their phone. Which segues to the next item on the list. That same list that you could scan off of the nameplate could include the email address and phone number or other contact information for the service and parts departments for the machine that you're trying to contact. So it's right there in front of you. And taking that example even further, imagine scanning a QR code and having a pre-filled service request form open on your device with all the required information about the machine and contact information for the company listed, saving you time and eliminating errors from entering the wrong serial number. The maintenance person would then simply fill in the description of the problem and click submit to request service. Moving on to the next slide. Standard operating procedures for employees. It's a good example where a dynamic QR code would be important, or at the very least, a dynamic landing page. So that way the employee is looking at the most up-to-date information every time they scan the code. The code or the landing page could easily be updated by the office whenever new procedures, policies, or safety requirements come out. Procedural documentation, basically a list of instructions showing an employee how to do something, whether that's the correct way to set up the machine, change tooling, even stack product, or as far as washing the shop truck. Most companies have a big list of procedures or ways that they want a task handled, and dynamic QR codes could send the employee the correct information every time they're looking for it. Training videos. Policies and procedures are important, and making sure that your employees know those policies and procedures is even more important. QR codes on a workstation linking to training materials like videos or even complete classes with instruction, quizzes, and final exams would be an interesting way to make sure employees are well trained and working properly. Every machine includes safety stickers and warnings. However, they're typically either a pretty basic picture showing what not to do, or they're a written list in one language. A QR code could link to much more detailed safety instructions and could pop up in the user's native language. Pretty much any information a team member needs at a workstation, in the lunchroom, or anywhere else in the work environment could be provided by scanning a QR code. Now, you've all probably read the example written below, so I won't go through it in detail, but I will point out that the key is that print materials are static and hard to update, whereas a well-designed QR code system can be updated anytime. And my third use case is marketing or call to actions. QR codes are becoming more and more widely used in advertising, typically with some sort of call to action like click here or learn more. I expect that when we walk into IWF this year, we'll see QR codes in a whole pile of different places used for a bunch of different things. Some of the uses there could include scan here to download the most recent brochure straight to your phone, so you don't need to carry around any paper brochures. Scan here to watch a video of the product working, or even a video of the sales team giving a quick pitch designed to draw the customer further into the booth. Some booths do scheduled demos of presentations. An interesting use case for QR codes would be to have the visitor scan a code that would add a reminder directly into their calendar listing the where, when, and why of the presentation. Visitors could possibly scan a QR code and enter their information directly into your lead capture system, providing another way for you to capture leads with zero work, especially when a booth is very busy or the visitor only has casual interest. Many exhibitors cross-promote their products at other booths. I'm thinking of tooling or dust collection suppliers. And a QR code that brings up a map showing where that cross-promoted booth is would be an interesting use as well. We've all seen the lease this for X dollars tags on machines at trade shows. What if a visitor could scan a QR code with a tag saying request lease rate, get the lease rate immediately, along with a pre-filled credit app that could be submitted right to your lease provider? Of course, another option would be a simple request a quote where they fill in the information, their name and address, and the information about what they're interested in, and go straight into your sales team. Lead capture is important for all of our businesses, and one way of capturing names and contact information is through contests. Few people want to spend time typing in a long or even short web address into their device, but a QR code or scanning a QR code is a simple way to accomplish that. QR codes are becoming more and more common on virtually all physical advertising and even product labeling. Brochures with QR codes pointing to websites, videos, and more information are the most obvious use, in my opinion. However, there's a few less obvious uses, including possibly adding a QR code to your packing list, boxes, receipts, or other physical materials to encourage customers to connect with you, visit your website, or fill out your survey. And now I'll pass you on to David, who will talk about 2 more use cases.
Thank you, Stephen and Scott, and to everybody else who's tuned in to participate and to attend in this webinar. We have 2 more, as Scott mentioned. The next one we could talk about is exchange of information. And first scenario, one of these things that has occurred for a long time is someone's Wi-Fi in their house or their business has a password that's a long 15-character alphanumeric, for example, and you have to go get the note card that the password is written on, pass it to all those people in order to input it into their devices. And I'm not sure if everyone on this call is aware of that simple use case, and that from that stems a lot more. But you can just go into your mobile phone that's already connected to a Wi-Fi access point, and then simply share that QR code that pops up after hitting share with any other mobile device, and they'll automatically be logged on with the credentials to that Wi-Fi access point. So that's a very cool thing that's just really started to happen recently. And keep in mind that QR codes in general, since they did not go through standard adoption of the regular camera application on the iOS and Android devices until 2018, are fairly new as mainstream barcode technology goes. We also have V cards that I wanted to touch upon. So those are virtual contact cards that allow you to virtually share a business card and your contact information with somebody else. We can go more into detail another time, or you could contact us with specific information on how to create those. But most of the QR code websites that we have available in our resource section will give you those options to create a link, to create a V card, to create all sorts of different kinds of materials that you're transmitting from your QR code. The interesting thing to bring up about the V card is, sure, that's going to bring you the regular information that was contained on a business card, like name, email address, phone number, job title, company, but it can also bring you to an actual landing page that contains a short biography, directions to your company, product information listings, all kinds of things that you can't fit on a normal business card sized piece of paper. And the final thing there is, in using dynamic V cards, which again, Stephen touched upon the difference between the static and the dynamic QR codes. Say you change positions or change jobs, or information about you or your products change, you can simply go in and update those. And you don't have to order a new set of business cards. They're automatically updated. Additional items that we can touch upon are event and visitor check-in, which I'm going to show an example of shortly. And then two-factor authentication enrollment, which uses QR codes to put you into a two-factor authentication process and helps that along. So the example here with exchange of information might be eliminating a visitor log that you have that's still just pen and paper on a reception desk. Instead of that, you could send visitors a link ahead of time where they put in their information, and then they can produce a QR code that they receive on their phone or device to scan or check them in. Once you've done that and their information is already in your system, one, it's digitized and in your database, so you can do what you'd like with that through your normal processes. But two, there's all sorts of other technology and applications you could utilize to automate different tasks that occur once you have their information. Follow-ups could be created automatically. An email could be sent out to them with information about the company. You could automatically create appointments or meetings on an Outlook calendar, all sorts of different things like that. Use case number 5 refers mainly to inventory management, but also to logistics and MES inside of a company's business. I wanted to mention that QR codes have become widespread over the past 5 years, but they were actually invented in 1994, and they were originally invented for the specific purpose of tracking automobiles and parts during manufacturing processes that occurred in the Japanese automotive market. And so you can see how that original use case of tracking inventory is still widely used today and is currently being adopted by a lot of companies. On individual items and materials, you can store information in the QR code that allows you to track all of those items. And when you're receiving them, adding additional information, counting those items, and shipping information as well. It's integrated into most inventory management software already, since the QR code is, perhaps we can say, like the son or daughter or maybe grandson of the barcode. It is integrated and available in a lot of the inventory management software you might already be using. The example that we have here is someone who might be changing their inventory management system from a barcode system to one that utilizes QR codes. And the advantages that they receive from making such a transition eliminates the need for proprietary scanners, since you can just use simple phones or tablets that already have cameras built into them. It allows for hundreds of times the information to be stored. That's 4,000 plus alphanumerics, as opposed to a much smaller number of actual characters and barcodes. It has a higher error tolerance, which means that up to 30% of the QR code itself could be obscured or damaged, and you can still read that barcode, because inside of the pattern, it provides redundant information. It provides the option of dynamic bulk editing. And so if you were going down this path, for example, you would get the services of some kind of a company or application that allows you to create bulk QR codes. And those can also be edited in bulk, meaning that you could change something about a product after it's already been printed on that product. And lastly, QR codes include the tracking information on location and time of scan according to how you set it up. So that's additional information that can be included and retrieved every time you're scanning those QR codes on the packages. Now, there are security concerns, and I was just watching a video last week on YouTube. There's someone who is looking into QR codes and different malicious ways that they could be used, but also the interesting things that you can do with them. Because there are so many alphanumerics that are involved, that are allowed to be contained within a QR code, this person actually went as far as to recreate the game of Snake where you're chasing around the little dots and the snake grows and the tail continues to grow, etc. But what that indicates is that scanning a QR code does not just bring up a website. It doesn't just bring up a V card. It doesn't just bring up a series of text characters. It could also be created to run actual scripts or software immediately upon scanning that, depending on how they're set up. And so it is something that you should be aware of and careful of, because it's susceptible to counterfeiting and cloning. I wouldn't just scan every QR code that you see. I would make sure that you look at what web address it's actually going to before you go there. In example, a lot of the browsers that we currently have, like Google Chrome or Firefox, if you're going to click into a link and it thinks that there's malicious activity or suspicious activity going on there, it'll give you a warning. But there's no such warning when you're scanning a QR code. It's just going to immediately go to whatever location it's programmed to go to. And I don't mean to shy people away from using them in manufacturing or logistics. It's just that from a user perspective, we should be aware that because you can contain so much data within a QR code itself, that other people that have nefarious purposes are always going to be trying to find ways to take advantage of that. Our additional resources here are links about QR codes themselves, how they work, sample generator, and some features that you want to look out for when selecting a QR code generator for whatever purposes you're looking to use it for. I will mention that this whole presentation is available for download, and there's a link later, which is a QR code, of course, that you can download the presentation through in PDF format. Links to our upcoming events here, to IWF 2022, which I hope to see many or most of you at, and to WIC 2023 taking place in San Diego. And both of these QR codes were created using the process that Stephen showed early in the presentation, just going to the website in Chrome, going to share, and then selecting the QR code and downloading the image. I'd like to direct your attention down to the bottom of the screen here, where you can scan a QR code to fill out a survey. That survey is going to ask you how much you were able to take from this presentation from a high level, but also we're interested in hearing about what topics people might be interested in us pursuing for speakers and information for the next wood industry conference in 2023. And at this point, I wanted to bring up Q&A. So if there's anybody out there who has specific questions, or heck, even general ones, right? We'll try to do our best to answer some of those questions. So please go ahead and enter them now if you have any questions for the panel. And while we're waiting, like I mentioned about inventory management, one of the things that I looked through when doing some research here is that there are so many different companies that are providing the ability to produce QR codes. So I think if you are interested in pursuing it for your business and organization, it's very important that you do your own research on what is necessary or required for you when you're creating those codes, and make sure that whoever you end up using to create those codes has those requirements available in their software. I still don't have any open questions here. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention, Stephen or Scott, before we close out the presentation?
Not from my side. If there's any follow-up questions afterwards, you can submit those also in the survey, and maybe we can get some answers back out to you.
Yeah, well, I hope this was helpful for everyone. And again, here's another link to fill out that survey or download the whole presentation as a PDF. And since this was recorded, it is going to be available afterwards as an on-demand link, which I'm sure will be hosted on the WMMA and WMIA websites. So if that's all, then thanks to everyone for participating, and especially to Stephen and Scott for co-presenting here. And we will give you the rest of your Thursday back.
See you at IWF.
Thanks, everybody.